And here's another thing you got to know, that I always know when I'm doing my work, because if I have a talk and I really step into it. So what that means to me, it is no surprise that people who are doing talks on transformation start having stuff that comes up that needs to be transformed. So we know who's doing their work. So it's going to be good talks next week. I'm very excited. So I'm really grateful to be with you on this auspicious morning where the new truly starts focusing to make itself known. I also said last week that I was a little bit nervous because for 3 months, those of you who know me, can you imagine what this has been? 3 months without speaking? And Steve said, Liz, no more than 30 minutes. I mean, if we do 25, I'm going to say a hallelujah, but I really only have one talk here. I don't have 12. So we're all blessed. We're all blessed. But it is really a joy to be here and to be speaking with you about living in the flow. I got inspired to do this by a book our book club has been reading. It's a book by Eric Butterworth, who is one of the lights of unity, and his called In the Flow of Life. And I know we have at least one in the bookstore. It's a wonderful book, and I used it as a jumping off place. So I've had this look that you've just seen on my face. I've had kind of a love-hate relationship with flow. Because I was often told, and again, those of you who know me well would understand this, I was often told, just go with it. Just go with the flow. And I didn't get it because of what it meant to me. Well, some of it had to do with my own personality, but I know that some of you already get that go with the flow. You live in it. And then there are those of us who the idea of it is confusing, because it can sound like go with the flow. It often felt, and maybe this felt like this for some of you, that when people would say just go with the flow means don't rock the boat. Don't try to do what you want. Give up. Just go with the flow. And it sort of invariably means what you're being is wrong, and you just need to be quiet and just go with the prevailing whatever. And for a variety of reasons, that never felt right to me. Then there are those who feel like flow. There's this flow. Some people are in this flow. And I seem to use her a lot as an example, but it's because she does Aikido, and this morning she was sharing that she did yoga, and last week she did yoga as well, and that's Denise Kaku. She does a lot of martial arts and other Eastern forms of, to our Western mind, exercise, help us be in the flow. But those of us who don't, look at that and go, how is this person getting in the flow? There's a flow somewhere and I missed it. I was looking over here and the flow went that way. So that's what we're going to talk about. So those of you who already get the flow thing, you can just hear it and agree, hopefully deepen in it. But I'd like to talk about some of the questions I've had about this thing called flow, and then talk about how we can get into it and use it and practice it. So first, what do we mean by flow? What is this flow that we're supposed to go with? Well, one way to describe it is as a universal life energy, or the energy of the universe. And mystics through the ages have referred to a flow, that this energy. The Taoists, they were really in that. The Tao, the way, speaks about the flow, that there is a natural flow that is moving through life. And the Taoists really work to understand that, to get rid of the obstacles to being in flow, to get rid of, in their lives, formal things. Of course, they were in China that had Confucianism and was really very formally prescribed things. They were trying to get rid of all that artifice and move into a more natural, authentic flow. Jesus Christ said, "The kingdom of heaven is within you." That's a way of referring to flow. It is something that is within you, that heaven, that harmony. And of course, in this more current age, the Force that the Jedi Knights use, the Force, although that feels, and we'll talk a little more about this later, that feels like something we have to push, but it is that energy that runs through us if we pay attention to it. So when is this flow happening? At 6:30 in the morning? Oh, great, I'll only get there on Sundays. I mean, it certainly seems that some people who are in the flow, they get up early and move into the day. But the flow is always happening. So there's no rules that say there's a perfect time to get into the flow, except for right now. Ernest Holmes, the founder of our Science of Mind teaching, said it this way: today, this minute, our minds are an outlet through which this invisible yet intelligent energy is operating. Today, this minute. So let's be with that for a second. I'm not going to have you repeat it loudly. What I'm going to have you do is close your eyes and say to yourself, maybe whisper to yourself, today, this minute, my mind is an outlet for divine flow. My mind is an outlet for divine flow. Again, today, this minute, my mind is an outlet for divine flow. And one more time. Today, this minute, my mind is an outlet for divine flow. You might remember that. Eric Butterworth says it this way, that there is a longing at the heart of the universe to flow forth and perfect all that has been created. There is a longing at the heart of the universe to flow forth and perfect all that has been created. Now, a little side note about perfect. That doesn't mean all those things that are wrong with me, nudge, nudge, nudge. Perfect really means to complete, to make whole. So what that means is there is a longing in the universe, we could say a longing that is of the divine, that is of God, to flow forth through us and expand us and to bring us into our greater good, our greater expression, that we may become greater and greater and greater outlets for that spirit. That is a longing of the universe through all that has been created. So that means through you and 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 you, all of us. That flow is for all of us and available to all of us. So how do we know this flow works? How do we know there's a flow? Well, as I said, the Taoists were really great at looking at nature. I cut myself recently. I don't have to do anything. I mean, maybe I go, oh, I need to put Neosporin. But really, if I did nothing on this, it would heal. How many of you have had cuts, ever had cuts that just healed? That is that flow of life energy to make perfect, to complete, to make whole your body. If you cut, there have been studies and observations of trees that have been cut in deeply into the bark and see how it grows back. And that example I love to use of the daisies and dandelions that come through the cracks in the concrete, that life has an urge, has an expression. That is the flow. It is there. It's like a current, like how an electrical current that will flow as long as the circuits are what? Open. And what determines whether the circuits are open in this thing called the divine flow? We do. It is our awareness and perception, Ernest Holmes said, our awareness and perception of this thing I'm calling the divine flow that determines its flow through us. So in other words, we think ourselves in or out of the flow. Whether our circuits are open or closed determines the flow, not the flow. The flow is always there. It is always stands ready to move through it. It is only our thinking. So why do we sometimes not feel it? What do we do that closes down that flow? Well, sometimes our need to control and our looking at things. I mean, who gets distracted by what we call in this teaching appearances? Do you ever look at something and think there's a problem and you need to go in and fix it? I know I never do. Again, those of you who know, you've never seen me do that. You know, and it isn't that we don't have things to contribute when there are challenges, but that need to control that something bad is happening here. Our judgment, this is wrong, this is bad, I'm the only one that can fix it. And our fear, especially when we have a fear of change. That all those, the judgment and the fear, which is why we feel we need to control really, is what closes down those circuits and keeps us from feeling that flow. So instead of seeing a challenge or an issue and getting distracted by it and think something's wrong, I've got to move in and change and fix this. If we are in flow, then we can know that something wonderful is happening here. Now, you know, it doesn't mean la 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 la, oh well, something wonderful's happening, I'm just going to go away. But it means we can stand and know something wonderful is happening here because the flow of the universe is working. As some of you know, Barbara Leger, the minister who, with our Centers for Spiritual Living, who began a center in Ukraine, and one of her teaching sites is in Crimea, and that's where she has a big conference every year. You can imagine, with all the stuff going on in Ukraine, that some of those folks at Temenos, her center, would be feeling a little stressed. They are not. We've been talking about this quite a bit lately. That she actually has several practitioners there, but they are standing in the knowing of that flow. And they know that beyond anything that is going on, Spirit is present. They can look beyond the stuff. And when we can look beyond the stuff, that's the point of being in the flow and know that the divine is about to reveal itself. And that is when the divine reveals itself. When we are willing to be in that flow and know what is happening and call it. Then we are participating with it. We are allowing it to flow through us, and we are assisting it in flowing everywhere because we will see it. So how do we do that? How do we do that? How do we open? Because I know, I had a day a couple days ago that I had said something that I didn't feel great about later, and it caused some upset. And the whole next day, everything I did was, I was not in the flow. I was in the, the flow doesn't look like that, by the way. Anybody who's not quite following me, the flow does not look like that. And so we all know when we're not in the flow, when the day begins badly, and it's usually because we've judged ourselves, we've made ourselves wrong, and then we have to go out and find other things to make wrong the rest of the day. So how do we move into the flow? Well, surprise, surprise, and surprise that I would be saying this, broken record. Too bad, it's really the truth. That to open to the flow, to have that flow through us, we need to be awake. All last year, our theme, we were waking up. We need to be aware of it. And most importantly, we need to have a practice to tune into it. You know, this is why we say daily spiritual practice. And what's interesting, especially for those of us good science-minders who want to, do our affirmations and sometimes get on this, it's almost as if we're feeding our self-thoughts. Well, we are feeding our self-thoughts. But the thing about the flow that can be tricky is it's not about willing it. It's about allowing it. As a matter of fact, that's for me personally why I still sing the peace song, Let There Be Peace on Earth. Many of us say, yes, there is peace on earth and affirm that the truth of it. That's great. For me, because I know myself, I want to say, let there be peace on earth because I want to open to that allowing. Because I know I try to control things. So pull that up and say, let it. So tuning into flow is about an allowing, not a willing. It's about contemplation, not about a string of affirmations. Affirmations are useful. But the thing about the flow is it's from the inside out. It is from the inside out. And so it is rather something that we have to listen to Spirit and feel it. We have to get still and feel it and allow ourselves become awake and aware of its presence, of that flow. Not try to make it be here, because it's already here. And that's actually why our spiritual mind treatment, our method of affirmative prayer that we teach in our classes here, is so fabulous. Because, I used to try affirmations and I thought they were really dumb because I would be saying these things and my mind would be chattering about why they weren't true. And I go, this is just making me crazy. This is just crazy making. This isn't working for me. So for me, when I learned spiritual mind treatment, it changed everything. Because when we begin spiritual mind treatment, we have 2 steps before we get to what we call our affirmation step or our recognition or our realization or declaration. And that is, we put our attention on spirit first and say, all that God is. And as we put our attention on all that the divine is, we start moving into that divine flow as we speak of it, and especially as we allow those pausing places. Say, I know that God is all there is. There is one life. That life is everywhere present. And as we breathe that in, we start feeling the flow. And then the second step, of course, which we call unification, which is where we say, and that flow, all that the divine is, I am. We open to it. We begin to feel it. And when we teach this, we say, if you get yourself anchored in those 2 steps of knowing the allness, everywhere presence, the infinite nature of the divine, and then approach that knowing that we are one with it, it is who we are, then when we speak the 3rd step, which is when we do that affirmation, when we say, this is what I want, this is what I'm accepting for my life now, at that point, we are already so knowing we're in the flow that when we speak that affirmation, it's not like, oh, I know I have a great relationship now and it's perfect and it's all working really well, and yeah, I know this is true, and I know this and declare. It's not like that, because we're already so convinced. And Butterworth says it like this, that our realization or declaration is like putting a feather on the wind. It's like putting a feather on the wind because there is no efforting. We've heard this before, that we are not trying to make something happen. And Ernest Holmes says that over and over again. We're not trying to make something happen. We are allowing that good to manifest, because any good we deeply desire is ours and it is coming. We need to get out of the way of our fears about why we can't have it. And when we get out of our fears about why we can't have it, then we are in that flow. We are open. Our circuits are open. So why really is it good to be in the flow? Well, because it allows us to move through life with a sense of ease and harmony and joy. Anybody not want that? I mean, sometimes, and I certainly can get into this, and I hope I'm not the only one here, I feel like I'm butting up against life. And if I feel like I'm butting up against life, I am not in the flow. And when I have awakened, gotten myself tuned into spirit, then challenges don't feel the same way, and I don't meet them the same way. I meet them with curiosity and with a sense of greater confidence that something is going to show up that's going to expand me. Resources are going to show up to support me through it. Would that be okay? Would you like to have the challenges in your life be something that you meet knowing you are in the flow and Spirit is going to support you through it to the other side? That when we are in the flow, when we allow ourselves to be in the flow, that's where healing happens. And healing means our recognition of our own wholeness. that right where each of us is, and as each of us is, we are whole, we are complete, we are perfect. Not without quirk, not without flaw, except to the divine, but we are whole, and recognizing it, and once we get that wholeness awakened in us, then anything unlike that wholeness starts to dissolve. When we know and trust and feel that flow in us, then we can meet life in a different way. We can meet life in a more harmonious way, as I said, and we can meet life and what shows up more effectively and efficiently because we're not fighting. Little experiment. Clench your fists. Do you feel expanded right now? Do you feel like you can meet the world with new ideas? No. Yeah. Bobby Hall has her dukes up. And that's what we do when we're in that fear. But if we open and expand our hands, just that doing of it allows something to release and open up, and we allow something to move through us. And we can allow that something to be the greater divine. And when we have that flow, we are more able to see what wants to emerge through whatever is happening, what wants to emerge, and then we can support others. In our vibration of flow, our vibration of good, our vibration of expectancy, of divine expectancy, draws others into that vibration. And we're a lot more effective in creating a world that works for everyone. So the practice, it's the practice, it's the practice, it's the practice. It's daily. I always say first thing in the morning, and Eric Butterworth supports me, he said, get your lights turned on first before you face the world. And having the awareness of flow of the divine moving through me definitely puts my lights on. So however it looks for you to tune into, and whatever you call it, the divine, spirit, the infinite intelligence, to tune into that. One way to do it is meditation. There's 50 bazillion ways to meditate. No, Reverend Valerie was talking about that the last time she was here. And Rev Kev talked about the need for daily spiritual practice. That is really it in a nutshell, that we do something to remember the truth of our life, that we are in divine flow. So whether it looks like meditation, several of you have been to the visioning. We had a visioning class. Several of us have been visioning. That is a great structure to really ask the question, what is Spirit's vision for my life? What is that flow that is wanting to emerge? Where is that flow wanting to gently direct me to? That's a way to be in that contemplation, to say, what is Spirit's vision for my life? And there's a little mantra that Eric Butterworth uses, which is, we know that be still and know that I am God. And he says, be still and know I am in the flow. Very simple. Be still and know I am in the flow. So let's just take a moment and practice this idea of tuning into flow. And this is actually a sort of a meditation from Plotinus, 3rd century philosopher that Ernest Holmes loved and wrote. So if you feel comfortable, close your eyes. Let your mind and heart release all that disturbs you. Let your body be still, and all the frettings of your body and all that surrounds it. Let the earth and sea and air be still, and heaven itself. And then think of Spirit as streaming, pouring, rushing, and shining into you, through you, and out from you in all directions, while you sit quiet. So see that Spirit moving through you, that divine flow. It is the truth of your being. It is the truth of where you live. In that divine flow of universal life energy. It is your home. It is your path. And in this moment, what would that flow of the divine through you have you know? What in this very moment, this very day, would that flow that is divine love, that is divine life, that is energy, that is fullness, that is wholeness? What would it have you know in this moment? And breathe into it. And know with me that every good thing that your heart is longing for is coming into your life. And that every good thing that wants to emerge as this Monterey Center for Spiritual Living is flowing into the life of this center right now. That because I know that there is that divine flow, I truly stand in the knowing that something wonderful is happening here and now, and is unfolding from this day, from this moment, and from the moments to come. So I see it, I claim it, I know it for my life, I know it for the life of each person here. I particularly am knowing it for all the folks at Temenos in Ukraine, holding their high watch for the flow. And I know it for the life of this Monterey Center. I am so grateful for the divine givingness, always. And I release this word, knowing it is so. So it is.